Good afternoon. I'm James Exum, also known as Sakshi, and this afternoon I will be presenting my latest discourse on the subject of the finding of yogic bliss. A lot of people think about this. They're hoping to obtain it via self-realization and so forth. Joseph Campbell spoke of it quite often, so did Carl Jung, and so did a few of the Upanishads. I seldom speak on this subject, but today I decided to do it. I think it's important. It's Saturday, the 4th of October, and it's about to turn to 3:50 p.m. here in South Austin, Texas. So let us begin. The title again is The Finding of Yogic Bliss. From a psychological standpoint, Dr. Carl Jung's perspective on individuation, the process of harmonizing the conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche, closely mirrors the yogic journey. Dr. Jung proposed that genuine happiness and fulfillment are achieved through the embrace of one's complete self and the resolution of internal conflicts. The resolution of internal conflicts. He regarded spiritual practices, including meditations, as avenues towards deeper and towards deeper self-understanding and integration, reflecting the yogic aspiration for bliss obtained via self-realization, as I said at the beginning. So there's an exploration of the pathways to transcendence and inner joy, and so I'm going to introduce those pathways to you at this point. Yogic bliss, traditionally known as Ananda, as in Satchitananda, in Sanskrit, signifies a profound state of inner contentment and joy realized through the disciplined practice of yoga. Throughout the ages, yogis, and I'm an old yogi, I've been a practitioner of yoga since 1974. I don't do the asanas much anymore. I deal basically now with the intellectual side of it, the learned side of it. When I was in high school, we used to call folks like myself bookworms, so the bookworm side of it. Throughout the ages, yogis and spiritual seekers have embarked upon various paths in pursuit of this elusive state, and it is very elusive, very elusive. A state that surpasses transient emotions and establishes a connection to a greater sense of unity and tranquility. This treatise examines the essence of yogic bliss, the methodologies for its attainment, its philosophical foundations, and its transformative influence on one's existence. And once it hits you, you will be transformed. The nature of yogic bliss. Yogic bliss is not merely a pleasurable feeling or an ephemeral emotional surge. Rather, it is characterized as a persistent sense of happiness that resides beneath ordinary experiences. Excuse me one moment, I'm stumbling over my words because I just realized I'm not wearing my reading glasses. Oh, there we go, much better. They're not just for looks, folks. I really need them. Here we go. Distinguished by serenity, expansiveness, and non-duality, yogic bliss is frequently described in classical texts as the realization of one's true self. The Atman. The Atman is also your soul. The Atman is also the witness. The Atman is also that soft little voice that comes to you occasionally and offers suggestions to keep you on the dharmic path and the karmic path of righteousness. It's also called Sakshi, which is the name I gave my soul, which is the second name I use in these discourses and on YouTube and in my physical writings. The Atman helps with the dissolution of boundaries that separate the individual from the cosmos. Helps profusely. This state is considered eternal, immutable, and independent of external circumstances. Now we're talking about bliss again. And let's cruise on down the page here. Now, what are these pathways to yogic bliss, would you think? Well, each person has to find their own path. They have to find their path of dharma. They have to find their path of karma. They have to find their path of jnana yoga. They have to find their path of raja yoga, bhakti yoga, and so forth. Well, there's a list here that we'll go through, and I've used this list before in other discourses, but if it's being redundant for you, if you're an old reader, well, that's just the way it has to be, and if it's new to you, well, it's new to you, and hopefully you'll be able to learn from it. Several principal techniques are emphasized with traditional yogic teachings. The first one is asana, the physical postures. Through steady and mindful movement, the body is cultivated as a vessel for the unobstructed flow of energy. This fosters relaxation, it alleviates tension, and engenders a sense of lightness, thereby facilitating access to deeper states of joy. The next one is breath control, also known as pranayama. The regulation of breath is fundamental in pacifying the mind. Techniques such as nadi Shadana, alternate nostril breathing, purify the energetic channels, permitting the emergence of blissful awareness. In reflecting on yogic bliss, I emphasize the necessity of cultivating a witness consciousness. Now, what is a witness consciousness? Most of the time we look outward at the world and notice what's going on. So in a sense, we're an informal witness in that way of thinking. But that comes and goes, obviously. But a true witness consciousness is one in which you not only look out on the world and witness what is happening externally, but you turn that perception inwardly. You turn it into the witnessing of the body in motion, and the body's activity, spontaneous or regulated. You also begin to witness the activities of the brain, if the brain is having a headache or if it's under tension. Well, the brain having a headache is impossible because the brain really doesn't feel, but you know what I meant by that. You know, if you're absent-minded, so to speak, which brings into play the mind that you also start paying attention to. The mind can be like in classic yoga narratives, especially the ancient ones, they speak of the mind as being like the monkey brain, the monkey mind. A monkey, they're not being insulting there, they're just simply giving an example. In the wild, the monkey's activities, besides eating and doing what it does, including reproduction, has really not a lot to do during the day, so it will jump from limb to limb, and it's very curious. So it'll go over here and look at this, and then it'll get scared or excited and jump to another limb and so forth. Well, that jumping around keeps that mind witnessing different things, but it's not really concentrating on any one thing. And that's the definition of a monkey mind. So an ability to observe thoughts and emotions without attachment is the ability that humans have over the lower animals. I say this inner witnessing opens the door to transcendence and allows practitioners to rest in a state of pure presence where joy arises naturally. Now, I have a partner in these writings, and his name is Adi Shankara. I'll let you look him up historically in any books on yoga, Wikipedia, Yogapedia, and you'll find out who he is. Very important. He's not a contemporary of mine. In fact, he lived in the 8th century Common Era. He was a great narrator and a great philosopher and a theologian and writer and just a remarkable, remarkable person in the history of yoga philosophy. And I'm an old yogi philosopher. Adi Shankara, the revered philosopher I just spoke of, further elucidates that Ananda, which is bliss, is the inherent nature of the Atman, which is the soul. And liberation is realized when one discerns the impermanence of worldly phenomena and instead chooses to abide in the self. He taught in such a manner that his teachings underscored the importance of discrimination, which in Sanskrit is viveka, and detachment, which is vairagya. Both of those are essential tools on the path towards bliss. You will forgive my drinking in front of you. I have one of the reasons I don't practice asana, the physical postures anymore, is I have a diagnosis of a Parkinsonian-like disease, which affects my vocal cords, my voice box, and also tremors in my left hand and things of that nature. It also affects my lower body. I walk in little baby steps. I don't walk normally any longer. Even though I was quite athletic up to the time it struck me. It didn't strike me down, it just struck me. I deal with it. I think I deal with it very successfully. If I had not mentioned it to you, you would never have guessed just by listening to me or witnessing me. Witnessing me. There's a pun. Okay, so this liberation is realized when one discerns the impermanence of worldly phenomena and abides in the self. His teachings underscore the importance of discrimination, viveka. I like the word discernment as opposed to discrimination. Discrimination has a negative connotation, especially in the way it was utilized in the 20th century. Of course, we're in the 21st century now. And detachment as essential tools on the path toward bliss. Adding a psychological perspective, now this is my favorite doctor of all doctors, Dr. Carl Jung. I've studied him for years. I discovered his name again about 74, 70, yeah, it was before 75, so it was in 1974. A couple of ladies I was going to taking courses with mentioned him to me, and that piqued my curiosity, and that's when I discovered him and started doing my research on him also. Researching is basically what I do, and then I report on my researching through either these videos, well, it's always been through my writings, and now lately through these videos. Dr. Carl Jung's insight into individuation, the process of integrating the conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche, parallels the yogic journey. Well, it parallels it because Dr. Jung, just like several scientists, and he was a scientist, and yoga is a science, it's not a religion. So I suppose in an informal way that makes me a scientist. I have no degrees, I just have a half a century of experience on this subject. Jung recognized that true happiness and fulfillment come from embracing one's wholeness and reconciling our personal inner conflicts. He saw spiritual practices such as meditation, and it is a spiritual practice, as a pathway to deeper understanding and unity. echoing the yogic pursuit of bliss through self-realization. The other scientist I was trying to think of while I was speaking to you, and it finally came to me, was Dr. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the A-bomb, they say. An exploration of the pathways to transcendence and inner joy might be found in the ancient scriptures cited in the philosophical foundations of yogic bliss, including the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita. Now, I've done several videos on the Gita. In fact, I did all 18 chapters of it. Well, I did it twice. I did all 18 chapters as a sort of a cursive and a very, just brushing past each chapter. Then I did a full exploration of each chapter. So I've done quite a few videos on that. For instance, the Taittiriya Upanishad in Book 2, Section 7, famously declares Ananda, bliss, as the ultimate reality. That illustrates that bliss is the essence of existence. Similarly, the Chandogya Upanishad, Chapter 7, Section 23, discusses the nature of supreme joy attained through self-realization. And I'll stop for a second and give a personal suggestion here. Well, all of this is suggestive, but a personal suggestion here that look through the Upanishad, learn the Upanishad, learn the Vedic text, learn the Gita. Well, at least explore it. Explore anything, including contemporaneous writings on the subject of yoga philosophy. My videos deal not with the asana, the physical, but with the philosophical. So anything having to do with yoga philosophy will help you along your path. It will calm you, it will teach you, it will integrate you into the subject of our choice subject today. In the Bhagavad Gita, the concept of inner joy and the realization of the true self is eloquently described in chapter 5, verse 24, eloquently, and, quote, one whose happiness is within, whose recreation, which is another way of saying play, is within, and whose light is within, which is another way of saying knowledge, that person becomes Brahman and obtains the bliss of Brahman. That person becoming Brahman. You say, well, how can you become God? Well, through the earthly mind and brain is limited to a major degree in the ability to grasp that concept. But once you get into the deeper teachings of yoga, you will see it's not really grasping the concept. It's accepting the concept. You're already a part of God because of that divine spark that's within you, which is the Atman, which is your soul, which is your Sakshi. It's on loan to you. It started with your first breath. It's on loan to you. It will end with your last breath. It's eternal. It's outside of space and time, just like Brahman is. If you think about it, a red corpus or a red cell, a blood cell in your body is a part of you. Well, that Atman on loan to you from the Creator is a part of Him. So in a way, we're already Him because we have a part of Him within us. Just like you're a part of your ancestry, your family tree. That's why the family is so strong as opposed to strangers over family, so to speak. And that person whose light is within, whose recreation is within, whose happiness is within, is on the path to becoming Brahman by obtaining the bliss of Brahman. There it is. If you're new to this, and yoga philosophy is not a kindergarten class, it's a postgraduate class par excellence, I assure you it is. And that's not brag, that's just fact, that's the way it is. Another important reference appears in chapter 6, verse 21, when the yogi, quote, when the yogi, by practice of yoga, experiences that transcendental joy which is beyond the senses, but can be grasped by the intellect, they remain firmly established in that truth. Well, when you first achieve bliss, it will come and go. Just like when you first turn into a teenager and puberty happens to you, all of a sudden you put away the childish things, as the Bible says, the Holy Bible, but you're not fully mature. So one day you're pseudo mature as a teenager. You're driving a car, and you might sneak around, smoke a cigarette, whatever, drink a little mild alcohol. Party, you stay out a little later than mom and dad required you to. But you're not really mature yet. And so maturity comes and goes, especially when you're changing into it. And the same thing with the practice of yoga, the experience, that transcendental joy, which is beyond the senses, but can be grasped by the intellect. They remain firmly established in the truth. They're established in the truth, but not in constancy within the mind. They come and go. But through practice and through concentration, through discrimination, and through selective thought patterns, it's sort of like training a Mustang. The Mustang doesn't want you to stay in the saddle. Well, neither does bliss. But once you get used to operating within the cycle of bliss, in the saddle, so to speak, it will allow you to stay with it longer and longer, and then it becomes a habit, and then it is yours. For further study on the subject of the great text having to do with bliss, you can consider authoritative translations such as the Principle Upanishads, or the Gita, or the Bhagavad Gita, as I just remarked a moment ago. Now, here are our philosophical foundations dealing with this. The ancient scriptures, including the Upanishads and the Gita, assert that bliss is the very nature of consciousness and not something to be acquired from the outside. It's an eternal thing, internal. If it were external, like air, or food, or water, well, it would be available to everyone. But it's internal, and not everyone sits around and internally explores looking for bliss. Those internal explorations. If that were so, I wouldn't have to give this talk. The teachings propose that suffering arises from misidentification with the body and mind, and there's the core of it. We suffer, which is the opposite of bliss, because we identify with the body and mind. And this is what was mentioned earlier by saying you go back to Brahman, you become Brahman. In other words, the Brahmic state of mind, which is Sat Chit Ananda, which is existence, consciousness, bliss. There it is. The practice of yoga facilitates this inward journey, gradually revealing the ever-present joy that is the substratum of existence. Now, I could stop there, but I'm not going to. The concept of Sat Chit Ananda, being, consciousness, and bliss, epitomizes the yogic perspective. Here, bliss is not separate from existence. It is what remains when all distractions and misperceptions fall away. That's basically it in a nutshell. Now, the experiencing of yogic bliss. Accounts from experienced practitioners describe yogic bliss as gentle, but a powerful presence, a feeling of warmth, light, and unity with all that is. In other words, you're in harmony, universal harmony with the cosmos. It may arise spontaneously during meditation, deep relaxation, or moments of surrender. There's another important part of this. You have to surrender your old way of thinking and being to obtain bliss. Bliss and chaos do not occupy the same space. The definition of an accident is as two objects trying to occupy the same space at the same time. Well, there's no accidental way of obtaining bliss. Unlike transient pleasures, yogic bliss is marked by steadfastly and continual clarity, humility, and a compassionate outlook toward others and yourself, or oneself and others. And I've lost my place. Here it comes. So what happens? How do you get to bliss? Well, there has to be an impact. There has to be a transformation. And discovery of yogic bliss often marks a turning point in a person's life. It brings lasting peace, reduces anxiety, and fosters resilience in the face of challenges. Well, that sounds like bliss to me. Relationships become more harmonious, and a sense of purpose and meaning emerges. On a societal level, individuals who embody this joy can inspire collective well-being and cultural enrichment. Well, this is what I try to do through my videos. Obstacles and misconceptions. And let me back up. When I say I try to do this, I know for a fact that not everybody gets the message. They're just not ready yet. If you take, say, a rabbit, and you put a chalkboard in front of him, and you try to teach him theoretical physics, he's not ready. He's a rabbit. But if you start drawing carrots on there, and then coloring in the color of carrots, carrot orange, so to speak, and you color in the little leaves that come off the end of it, that leafy green, you'll perk his intellectual attention because you're reaching him at his level. I'm trying to reach you at a teaching level so that your mind will expand open. It will be open to my teachings, which will lead to the eventual acceptance of these teachings, and that is the pathway to bliss. It opens the pathway to bliss within your mind and your intellect. It's the intellect that will accept it, not the brain, not the mind, not the body. That's why it's an internal acceptance. Obstacles and misconceptions. While yogic bliss is available to all, it is often obscured by attachments. Well, what type of attachments? Well, you're still attached to the world. You're still attached to your body. You're still attached to your personal needs. Distractions. Lord, I can't even start a list of distractions that human beings are submerged within nowadays. And unresolved emotions. If you're not in control of your emotions, how can you become blissful? You have to resolve your emotional distresses and problems. And you have to evolve out of those. The pursuit of bliss can sometimes become an obstacle in itself if approached with craving or impatience. You cannot crave bliss because then the emotion of craving is there. You have to rid yourself of all this non-important elements of your personality and your physical activities and your psychological desires before bliss will show up. True yogic bliss is not about escaping reality, but embracing it with openness and equanimity. Now we're going to conclude. The finding of yogic bliss is both a culmination and a continual unfolding. Continual unfolding. It is a testament to the transformative power of yoga as a holistic practice, not only for the body and mind, but more importantly for the soul. By dedicating oneself to mindful practice, self-reflection, and compassion, one can gradually unveil this inner joy. You have that veil of Maya, illusion. Maya is the great illusionary veil. It's more than that, but it is in this sense, we're thinking of it as a veil. You can kind of see hints through it, but you can't really see the whole picture, the clarity of it. This inner joy and share its light with the world. One can gradually unveil this inner joy and share its light with the world. Well, there it is. So, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, that's wonderful. If you didn't, that's okay too. And as I always say, be good to yourself, be good to others, be good to strangers, for who knows what will come out of your activities of goodness to any and everyone you deal with in life. Also, keep the faith, my friends. Politically and economically, what's happening to American society right now, we'll go back to that old saying, this too shall pass. And when it does, we'll all be able to look at each other once again in a friendly manner, not in a divisional way, and say, isn't it wonderful? We're back to being a normal society. Well, as I said, thank you. Hope to see you again. And if you get a chance, share my videos with others or suggest them to others. And if not, that's your choice. Bye-bye.